They should give us some level of protection.
I guess that depends on what we need protection from.
You afraid you're gonna run into a Titan? Where's your sense of adventure?
Beware, spoiler phobes! You have stumbled into a storm of spoilers, a podcast that is also desperately looking for Godzilla across space and time. This podcast is split into 3 sections. In the first section, we call The Calm. Neil and I will cover the 7th episode of the 2nd season of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, titled String Theory, where the causality of linear time is thrown into the wood chipper for some emotional beats. Then, in a short storm section, we'll use what Apple has told us to expect next week to prepare for what will likely be a not dream Godzilla, we hope. Finally, in our 3rd segment, The Godzilla Project, Neil enters the post-production process on Godzilla Awakening with his editing. Hello, I'm Dave Gonzalez.
And I'm Neil Miller, and welcome back to a storm of spoilers. Before we get to all that fun stuff, a little bit of housekeeping. Of course, our upcoming schedule, we've still got several weeks of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, Season 2. This, of course, Episode 7. We're going to get all the way to Episode 10. And then I think we might do like a recap of the season. That'll take us into mid-May. We're already into mid-April. That's crazy. And that means toward the end of May, though, we will begin our march back into Westeros for House of the Dragon, which I'm very excited about. I was reading a little Fire and Blood this week, so that's on the horizon, I'm excited to say. But for now, Monarch pods will continue to come out on Saturday after the episodes premiere on Fridays on Apple TV. And, they'll be here in your podcast feeds or on YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube. Here are ways that you can get in touch with this show. You can send us a raven, of course, stormofspoilers@gmail.com. Questions, corrections, theories, additions to our Godzilla Project game. If you would like an executive producer credit, many have been earned so far. Anything that you would like to say to the show, either about Monarch or the Godzilla Project, or even if you want to get ahead and start talking to us about House of Dragon, that's fine too. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The rule is always leave us a 5-star rating. Say whatever you want. Got a couple of comments this week. First, we finally, Dave, have a review on Apple Podcasts.
Yay!
This from beloved listener Fish, who says it titles it "Pity, No Love, A Storm of Spoilers." Really? After 2 weeks of Neil being bummed about no reviews, I decided to finally write one. I started with Trial by Content, but then went back to GOT and listened to much of the back catalog. Love listening to their commentary. I just checked out the YouTube channel, nice plug, which I was not prepared for. I will continue listening to the podcast. LOL.
Which one of us was not what this person was expecting when they were which face does not match the voice, do you think?
So many questions. We also did, and I brought this one just for you, Dave, because you put so much great work into it. A comment from Haiku575 on Spotify said, "Loving the Godzilla Project game." And this also, I guess I'm going to read an email as well up top here. I normally would put this in the calm, but this is actually not calm. It's just general. We got an email along the same lines from Matt P this week, who said, "I wanted to echo the sentiment that I'm enjoying the podcast on Monarch and the journey to making Neil's movie more than the show this season. I appreciate Storm of Spoilers by bringing me more enjoyment from the show that otherwise is just an okay show in season 2. The podcast certainly make me want to keep up with the show in a more timely manner than if I did not have the podcast to listen to." That is a ringing endorsement if I've ever heard one. And honestly, the best we can hope for, I guess, for season 2 of Monarch at this point. A couple more things before we get into the things we can hope for from Monarch. Of course, I've mentioned it multiple times. You can get us on YouTube, youtube.com/@astormofspoilers. Make sure you're subscribed over there if you have YouTube, which I think everybody in the world does at this point. and you can get this podcast in video form. We appreciate all of the likes and the comments and all the things that help the algorithm find us. And the Godzilla model called Evolved Godzilla by Pumpkin that we are using under the Creative Commons license to save Dave the time of having to model Godzilla himself. It's pretty good.
3D modeling's hard. I don't like it.
And of course, if you would like to provide material support to this entire endeavor, you can join us over at patreon.com/Dave and Neil, Da7e and for to both support us and get more stuff. We have more weekly podcasts, the Pop Culture Adventure Pod. This month, we're doing deep dives into movies about video game adaptations, our second such series in as many years. This week, we talked about Sonic the Hedgehog. Dave watched it for the first time. It's pretty fun chat that we had, but we also chase various pop culture storms every week and talk about video games. And you get access to our Slack, where, very importantly, starting this weekend, April 12th, Sunday, you will be able to join us at any level of our patronage for Sunday live watches in our Stream Together channel of the Netflix German language mystery murder time travel show Dark. We have embarked on a new watch project to go along with the series of watch projects that include Twin Peaks, The Leftovers, and Hannibal. And if you subscribe to the Patreon at the highest level, the small council level, you will also get a podcast every Sunday from Dave and I. We recorded it already, and we had a really, really interesting conversation about the first episode of Dark. It is, I think, going to be a really interesting show because neither of us have seen it, and we are spooling up all kinds of wild theories that I imagine people who have already seen Dark will be laughing at. So, come along with us for that part of the journey. All right. So that's all of the housekeeping. Dave, what happened this week on Monarch Legacy of Monsters?
Boy, I was really prepped for this week by watching Dark, Neil, because if I had not watched Dark, a entire series that at least is telling me from the first episode that time is a flat circle, I would have been a lot more pissed at this episode. And maybe I am still pissed. Let's break it down as it happens. I am interested, before I get into this, Neil, we were talking last week that if the show was building to something, that maybe we would be able to forgive some of the stupider things that had happened earlier this season. I do feel like we have flipped the switch with the timey-wiminess, especially with that popping up on the Isabel plot much later in this episode as being key to what she's doing. So I do think this episode is the switch flipping. And I do think that there's some good stuff in here nestled amongst a lot of hand waving that, once again, I'm unsure why we're doing it. Sure. And another May teleportation that we get to talk about.
Right.
Can't wait to break it down.
It's worth noting a distinct lack of Godzilla.
A distinct lack of Godzilla still. We're going to talk about that on the Storm. I don't think that's going to be forever on this show, but we are in like the finale arc, I believe. Flashback. We are watching Operation Hourglass stuff from season 1, where 1962 young Shaw got sucked into the Axis Mundi and his crew died. We also see him saying goodbye to young Hiroshi and Bill Randa, both dead to us, the viewers now. By Mission Day Foxtrot, that's day 6, young Shaw is the only crew member left as he radios in the blind to Control. Mission Day Oscar, that's day 15, Shaw starts digging traps to try and catch local wildlife since he ate the last rations the day before. Some pretty Axis Mundi drone shots as young Shaw checks his trap and sees a vision of himself in there, not any actually trapped food. Maybe he's dug his own grave, he asks, as he takes a quick depression nap and almost misses what we know as his older self and old Dr. Suzuki transmitting from the future. He finally picks up, and we rejoin where we were at the end of last week's episode as we get some titles. Neil, we're back in the Axis Mundi. How is it looking to you this season?
I mean, the Axis Mundi looks fine. obviously have all kinds of different time dilation questions. I guess, should we be assuming that he's been in there for 15 days by the opening credits, which means that roughly 15 years-ish would have passed in Earth time, right? So that would put, like, in theory, him sort of parallel with like 1979.
Sure.
But
if it's consistent, then in theory, yes. We know he's in there for like 20 some days,
and it all goes to shit.
Yeah, we know he's in there for like 20 some days, and at the end of this, they sort of like send him back into season 1's timeline. I guess the question I have ultimately this entire episode is they do something like have the scar on his cheek the entire episode, and we see him sort of get it. So obviously it's like this has always happened before, but then we've also lost track of Titan X, and the tracker doesn't exist in our timeline until he places it in the past. So I get why they're doing this. There's some compelling television, and why Russell gets to have a showcase episode before he leaves for his own spinoff that we know is happening.
And and we get to have some Wyatt and Kurt, I guess, in the same scene together, at least talking over a radio. But it does, I do think it raises a big question about the rules of how time travel or dilation work. Right?
Yes.
Because if Shaw is communicating with his past self and he doesn't, as an older version of himself, remember this, does that mean we have like a splintering timeline effect? Because it's not like a loop, right? Because if it was a loop, old Shaw would remember this happening to him as a young man.
I mean, I think the show is purposefully vague on this at that point because it, again, is more about like the relationships. But I imagine they're going to have to explain, at least like this season, what Isabel's theory is about erasing G-Day from like existence. So I always kind of assumed that if you went into the Axis Mundi and you came out, you would come out later than when you came in.
Right.
But maybe things in the Axis Mundi through some, weird graviton thing are always there. We had a similar theory when we were going through Twin Peaks about the Red Room. Is sort of like once you touch the Red Room, party's always kind of there.
Sure.
So if the Axis Mundi is timeless, not time dilated for whatever crazy reason, like later on in the episode, could Kentaro go in there and find his dad who was in there last season? They are technically in there at the same time, or is it just the science thing, whatever Dr. Suzuki's device is doing, that's the external force that allows us to hook into this other wavelength that is, to your point, maybe another dimension?
Sure.
Or maybe just like this dumb radio signal that is going through time, which again makes so much weird nonsense in this episode happen, but also makes no sense at its core.
And listen, it is, as I feel like we're going to be discussing for the next 26 weeks of our lives as we watch Dark, it's dangerous territory, time travel, fiction, right? Especially in movies and television, because eventually you do have to establish rules and you do kind of have to explain yourself as a writer's room on this. So, because if we get to the end of this season or the end of this series, even worse, and we still have a bunch of hanging questions, dangling threads about like what was the time travel rules, that's a big problem, right? Because it's just one of those fires you don't start without knowing how you're going to put it out, kind of things.
Right.
So I don't know if I trust them yet.
I think I didn't understand what Dr. Suzuki's device was doing last week because it was setting up what it was doing this week, which is inherently impossible, which was, I thought last week what he was saying was, if I could access the portal with my device and find Godzilla, then I would be able to track him through linear time to now. But for whatever reason, when he shoots out his device, as he says at the beginning of this week's episode, instead of bouncing off a Titan, it bounced off another signal, sort of like creating this connection, which again feels weird because my previous understanding was based on linear time. If we know where it was then we'll know where it is now. Instead, it is the only thing that breaks linear time because apparently young Shaw has some sort of agency in there, even though he's in the past.
Well, and eventually old Shaw's like, oh, well, yeah, of course, Godzilla wasn't in Axis Mundi at that point. And I'm like, all right, well, where was he then? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. I guess like still out and about in the world.
I suppose.
Not doing G-Days.
I mean, I do feel like one potential answer here to the time travel thing is that yes, Axis Mundi is a space that exists outside of time. That's the easiest answer for plot reasons. And that the Titans can move, or at least Godzilla as the king of the monsters, the king of the Titans, can move through time holes, forward, backward, sideways, however he needs to, which I will say, very convenient for my movie.
Yeah,
but,
that's honestly the thought I had while it was happening is like, are they making Neil's movie possible on this show?
Actually be helping me make my fictional movie, but I don't know if it's making their show any better.
If you're wondering where Baragon went, stay tuned to segment 3 of this podcast. He's been through the Axis Mundi time hole. Yeah, it's some crazy times. All right. After some confused faces, Old Shaw begins talking to his young self, telling him that he's sure Monarch is going to get young Shaw out of there. Old Shaw deflects when his younger self asks about Bill Randa because, as I've mentioned, dead. Back at Dr. Suzuki's house, Keiko and Kate have been analyzing the signal they picked up from Kate's dip in the ocean last episode. Through some sort of spectrometer, they discover the signal is a dual iris pattern. And Neil, they both pretend to know what that means.
Sure.
They're like, it's seemingly impossible. I'm like, okay.
I guess this is something you would know.
Waves from one would disrupt the waves from the other.
Yeah, both as a scientist, whatever Keiko's doctorate is in, and as a middle school teacher.
Right.
This is common knowledge amongst those two professions.
Amazing. After Kate fears that she's projecting a lost feeling on Titan X, Keiko reassures her that Titan X is off its migratory route and could very well, by definition, be lost. If they can track it, maybe Kate can lure it back into the Axis Mundi. Real big Godzilla, get back in your whole energy. I like this plan. Mm-hmm. Keiko remembers a cursed village in Japan that Bill Randa noted on his Titan X notes. The legend was that a yokai, that's a demon, was luring women out into the darkness. Keiko also found some photos from the village of haunted-looking women. Mm-hmm. Billy's theory was that the yokai was Titan X, and Keiko's new assumption is that these women were hearing Titan X's song, and if Kate could help, maybe they can track the Titan. So they are off to this nameless village.
Sure.
That is a very real set, I'm glad, when we get there. But also very weird to be like, and also this other thing that was in Billy's notes that we haven't thought about now. Well,
sure.
Doing
and now we're also introducing yokai, which is,
yes.
I mean, cool. Yokai are awesome, and scary and whatnot. But I guess I appreciate that we are getting one step closer to understanding the connection here. And I guess it's just like, if you're a woman from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of Japanese heritage,
of certain Japanese heritage,
which is that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. This is Godzilla after all, so like, okay.
Yeah, I saw some complaining on the Monsterverse Reddit, rightfully so, about how much time we're taking to actually get to the Godzillas, and I am like, yes, we are taking a long time. Also, proportionally, like 40% of Godzilla's film canon also holds Godzilla off for this period of time.
Sure.
So I get both. What kind of silly monster storytelling do we want? We're talking about that's on the show all the time. This is apparently how silly the Monsterverse is going to be.
Yeah.
In Tokyo, Kentaro is packing when Mei shows up. Kentaro apologizes for trying to kiss her last episode. Mei understands, but that doesn't mean Kentaro wants to share that he's off to Thailand to visit with Isabel from Apex. So he complains that he wants to live his own life, and Korame leaves it alone, only for her to be picked up by some goons in the hallway and teleported into the middle of the ocean, but we'll get back there. Back at the Axis Mundi portal, Zook boosts the power and they regain contact with young Shaw. Old Shaw, who still wants to find Godzilla so he can Titan vote him into the fight, into Fight Titan X, asks young Shaw if he's seen any sign of Godzilla. Young Shaw questions how that helps anything. And that's when Old Shaw recalls, like you pointed out, Godzilla is not in the Axis Mundi that we know at that time period. Mm-hmm. So he pivots to a new plan to place a tracker on Titan X in the Axis Mundi in 1962 so they could track him to 2017. He's like, I have a memory of when I was in the Axis Mundi earlier this season and saw Titan X emerge when Kate had it came out. But also it's going to be there in 1962. But also Bill Randa tracked it for multiple migratory cycles that it came out of the Axis Mundi, went back in.
I guess
Why is it still in that mountain?
I guess it goes back to the Axis Mundi and re-encrusts itself into the mountain.
In the exact same mountain.
Exactly in the same spot. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so Old Shaw sends Young Shaw back on a hike to the entry pod, and we see a teasing shot suggesting Young Shaw is being stalked by that Titan centipede, but that isn't going to pay off for like half an hour of runtime. Cut to Phuket, Thailand. Phuket, Japan, I almost said. That would be bad. Where Kentaro rolls up into a seemingly remote compound that is, we learn, owned by Isabel. She's inside kickboxing training. Isabel tells Kentaro about her father, how her father tried to save the rainforest in Thailand, but got bored of this property and gave it to Isabel on her 21st birthday. Isabel claims she doesn't have any say or knowledge in what Apex does, but she does seem to want to talk to Kentaro about something Apex Monarch adjacent that she will not bring up this whole visit. It drives me insane, but we will slowly roll through it. Yeah, imagine, Neil, if I brought you to Thailand and refused to tell you why I brought you there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's great to have Amber Midthunder here. We love and revere much of her work, but to have her show up and be a classic character who very, very proudly withholds information is just not great.
For no reason. She wants something out of him, and he's like, okay, what do you want? Like multiple times, and then we cut away.
Also, everything about Kentaro's movements in like the last 2 episodes have indicated that he's like moving to her side, right? Like we talked about this last week where he's like totally flipping on his sibling and his friends and now May and like, you know, Kentaro's ready to be on Team Apex. So I don't know why she's playing, other than plot reasons, why she's playing this so close to the vest.
I apologize to listeners who this episode really worked for you because I'm going to nitpick again. Here we go. In 1962, Axis Mundi, young Shaw gets to talk to Dr. Suzuki, who claims his old man voice is part of a time radio distortion, which is a weird thing to lampshade when Suzuki is a young man in old age makeup, and voices may change over 50 years, but already we've heard that the radio signal in the Axis Mundi is spotty. Why deal with it at all if young Shaw can't even recognize his own voice? Are we meant to think it's only because age has changed his voice? I have so many questions that I don't need to be asking on this show. Why is it even bringing it up? So we get out of it because Old Shaw pulls a your mission soldier on his younger self and just looks guilty about it. Oh, okay.
Because we need to fill time. Because apparently we have to hold Godzilla and all the cool fun stuff for the end. And the show doesn't have anything else to give us. Right? Like, this is what I'm waiting for, is like, what is the show going to do in the meantime? And this is what they're choosing to do, which is like have a whole scene where Shaw has to be like gaslit about Suzuki's voice and why he doesn't sound right. It's, it's definitely a creative choice on the part of the writer's room.
And then it ends with the button again that's more interesting, where Old Shaw's like, you're just there to do a mission, which is him becoming his dad, which we were teeing up last week. And I thought would really come up here, given that he's talking to his younger self. But instead, the episode decides it's not really into that. Because in the South Pacific Ocean, on a floating Monarch outpost boat, May is led into the room like a goon, like she wasn't just flown out of Tokyo to a Black Ops boat, but instead just moved across the hall. Monarch Tim is there to scold her about going rogue, totally proving my reading of the spy situation correctly and this show as dumb. Apex has let Brenda swing in the wind, and all they have is a little bit of that Titan X tentacle still attached to the Apex device running May's code. Monarch Tim guilt trips May into agreeing to work on the device and to find the Titan again and to get it back on its migratory route. I'm glad Tim's back. I'm sad Tim is immediately back and being like, where were you? Because we had a lot of hopes that Monarch Tim was maybe smarter than he was appearing, but apparently not.
Mm-hmm.
In Thailand, we learned that Isabel was adopted a year before Maya Simmons, the miracle baby, came along. Good to have an answer on that. And that Isabel wasn't the favorite. She wonders if that's how Kentaro felt since Kate came back to the Axis Mundi. Isabel wants Kentaro to make a new world with her. And yes, this scene still doesn't have her make an actual ask. Just slightly sounding more like a Bond villain, and again giving the hard sell to somebody that is already on her side.
Sure.
In the Axis Mundi, young Shaw finally asks who the guy on the other end of the radio is. Colonel Shaw tells Major Shaw he could call him Colonel, but old Shaw does give up some details that he never got married, but has recently come across some kids he has come to care for like a family. Suddenly the ground starts glowing blue, and old Shaw tells his Axis Mundi self to run. Young Shaw survives the lightning storm that follows, but gets a scar on his cheek. We see old Shaw still has, so this all has already happened, I guess. But again, weird that we aren't also seeing other consequences. Usually when episodes are about time, it's about what you can change. And this episode does eventually become that, but it's weird to signal this with like a you can't change anything to begin that discussion.
And I guess, again, eventually they're going to have to explain why old Shaw doesn't remember having this conversation in the Axis Mundi when he was young Shaw.
Yeah, or like maybe he's making new memories because you can affect things, which I could maybe understand, but that's not how Kurt Russell's playing it. So it's questionable. Suddenly, young Shaw happens across a camp and finds Keiko's Geiger counter from Kazakhstan. Young Shaw starts yelling for Keiko despite old Shaw's warnings. Just in case you thought the Randas had some sort of respect for history, in the random Japanese village, Keiko and Kate roll up past a keep out sign by kicking through an ancient fence to see a bunch of gravestones with Monarch's Legacy of Monsters Season 2 Episode 7 specific carvings on them. Wailing women, tentacles, monsters embracing naked wailing women. We push in to a wailing woman's mouth and back to young Shaw, still yelling for Keiko in the Axis Mundi. Old Shaw on the radio tells him to calm down. Only one thing matters, protecting Keiko at all costs. Young Shaw says that the radio guy sounds, quote, like me, unquote, and old Shaw says, say that again. Young Shaw realizes he's talking to himself in the future and thinks he might be having a mental breakdown. Old Shaw says he knows young Shaw loves Keiko, even though he's very careful about not saying that or even thinking it. Young Shaw says he thinks he's going to save Keiko now in the Axis Mundi. In 2017, Old Shaw asked what would happen if young Shaw changed when Keiko came out of the Axis Mundi. This apparently would change Keiko's future and basically unwrite, as I understand it, large swaths of the 20th century.
Okay, so it is a loop.
Maybe. Like if she comes out early, if she comes out in the 80s where we know like Shaw comes out.
Right. She has a much different relationship with her son.
Uh-huh. And her son is like maybe not searching as tough for his father and maybe has one wife and
yeah, maybe at least one of the kids disappears from the photograph like in Back to the Future.
But also we don't know everything that Lee Shaw is about to do in his spinoff in the 80s. So like he could change entire things. They could never find King Ghidorah in Antarctica and then we're all screwed, you know? It's like, I don't know quite the extent is. I guess it would depend on when Shaw pulled out Keiko early from, but it doesn't matter. Because old Shaw radios down to young Shaw, who's creeping on Keiko, hunting in the Axis Mundi. Old Shaw tells himself Keiko doesn't need to be saved right now, that eventually a version of Lee Shaw will save Keiko to live a life she wants to live with her grandkids, who are the kids old Shaw was referring to previously. After probably the best single not VFX shot this season because it includes an actual television performance, young Lee takes a long look at Keiko and lets go, leaving her to be rescued in a couple of weeks by Kate and Old Shaw. What an uncharacteristic trust in a performance that this show just leaves on that shot. Probably the highlight of this week for me, but also probably the reason this episode was written was to contain that moment.
But it also means that Shaw leaves her there and comes back to the 1980s and lives multiple decades of his life knowing that she's in there, and waits until 2015 to even try and
it does explain how in 2015 he's so gung-ho about immediately like stealing Monarch's equipment and doing stuff. He's not really in it for Hiroshi to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's
it
like,
does.
All right, it's finally time to go get her.
Yeah. But also he knows that eventually it happens, and he also knows that it's the kids. So when the kids show up to that place in Japan in season 1, he could, in theory, have been sitting waiting for it to happen, knowing that those things were like, those were the pieces that needed to set his thing in motion. So he wasn't going to go back for Keiko until he knew the kids existed. And once the kids found him, he's like, all right, it's go time. Maybe. I'm being very generous to the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're giving the show a lot of credit here.
But Keiko, for herself, like eats that fish and is only down there for like 2 more weeks, and then Old Shaw is back for her. So
That's true.
Keiko's doing okay, it looks like. In a nameless Japanese mythical village, Kate and Keiko find a well and deduce that the women were driven crazy by legend, were actually being lured to this well where they would hear the Titan call clearer if they were in the water. Kate immediately wants to be lowered into the well. Keiko's like, hey, I have some being lowered into the ground PTSD that got me trapped in a time-dilated dimension for half a century, and claims it was the worst mistake of her life. Kate, in maybe the first healthy thing Kate has said all this season, says that Keiko's decision, and therefore all the lost time, was not a mistake. That Keiko, like Kate, is willing to put themselves in danger to seek answers. That seems to be the legacy these monsters would like to pass down to their children. Keiko says, sometimes what haunts us keeps us safe. Neil, this drives me insane. Then in an obviously ADR'd line, because it's on Kate, she says, I trust you, Kate. Go find what's down there, because we're second screening. Because then we cut back and we get the rest of the shot where a single tear from Keiko and she gets a nod, and because Grandma's going to lower Kate into the hole. Just like, it's a very emotional moment, but you could tell at some point in like editing, in post-production, someone was like, well, how do we know the nod is like, I'm going to lower you into the hole? And you could trust the audience that the next scene is just her lowering it into a hole. But instead we get this ADR line, I trust you, Kate, go find what's down there. Sure. And then we cut back to the shot like literally frames later. So it's obvious that line was not shot from the shot that we get of Keiko. It's just those little bits of weirdness that make the show.
We wouldn't want the audience
sloppy
to have to pay attention, Dave.
We got to put her down the well. Well that we'll later learn has a series of like very easy to walk into caves. Not important. On the Monarch outpost boat, May is working on the Titan X tentacle, and we learn her code was actually bouncing signals off the nervous system of the Titan to translate its brain signals. Cora May learns that Brenda didn't give her up during questioning, even though she assumed she'd been burnt. I think all of this is interesting, Neil, because we're about to not return to it again, but instead find Titan X through a time-traveling tracker. So maybe here's a good time to ask, what is May doing now this season?
I mean, I guess there has to be like a secondary purpose to all this, right? Like them trying to explain that her code is more about creating sort of a translator. between the Titan's brain language and, human communication is something that does get us closer to where Apex eventually wants to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, maybe she, again, either accidentally or haphazardly stumbles into giving Apex the key to unlocking their Mecha Godzilla dreams later on. I still think that could happen here. It's just kind of funny that they wrapped it all up in like her potentially being the solution to finding Titan X when that was not ever going to be the case. Right?
Yeah. I think if I were to predict the best possible ending, Kate and May kiss, and together they learn how to understand Titan X in a way that everybody else could understand Titan X.
Sure.
Like, that seems like a way that the characters are sort of like moving towards each other, and that we had to just sort of like sideline May this episode. But again, May gets the Littlefinger Mockingbird speed treatment of getting teleported to the South Pacific onto a boat. And then the thing that she's working on gets invalidated within the episode that it's introduced.
Sure.
So I'm very interested to see what this ends up doing. The show has not given me confidence so far. All right, let's see where we ended up. In Thailand, oh God. Right, we cut back and Isabel is sad that Kentaro has demanded to leave a day early, but I get it, she hasn't actually asked him anything yet.
Sure.
Anyway, she also won't hear. But hints that the two of them could team up to delete G-Day from the timeline, maybe by manipulating the Axis Mundi. Isabel points out that Hiroshi only told Kentaro about his time in the Axis Mundi, which I guess he shared with her off camera, because that was definitely a flashback that the audience saw, and not anyone else. Now I'm wondering if Kentaro is going to be in it to rescue his dad somehow. Neil, what are we doing with this plot, do you think?
Well, I mean, okay, so we've talked about this wild theory that one of the ways in which this show could preserve the canon of the movies and still operate on its own is by using the timey-wiminess of the Axis Mundi to somehow invalidate the plot of the show.
Right.
Or pull it out of the timeline that eventually becomes the cinematic timeline. And, for a while we thought that maybe it would be like Shaw trying to do that. But now we have Isabel and this whole idea of like, what if we could go back and prevent G-Day from ever happening? And that is the kind of thing that would kind of wipe out everything that we've watched in 2 seasons of television, which I think is, again, very much a creative choice. And I would honestly bet would be very frustrating for a large portion of the audience to be like, what was the point of this then? If we're going to either purposefully let a character do this or have a character accidentally do this. But I think it's one thing to like have these characters ultimately somehow end up getting like sucked into the Axis Mundi and like have the characters get removed from the timeline and have, obviously the movie plot go forward. But for them to be able to like, turn off events that we've seen happen like in movies, I don't know. I don't think it's going to work. Or it's just an excuse, I guess, to continue Kentaro's antagonist arc, and or maybe bring back Hiroshi, adult Hiroshi, in some way. And it almost feels like the show can't decide which characters it needs for a season 3.
Right.
And they're like, well, we don't know, because they didn't know if Kurt Russell was going to want to come back for a season 2. So I bet you they don't know if he's going to come back for a season 3. So they're like, well, if we can't get Kurt Russell back, we might need Hiroshi back. So like we might need to figure out a way to be able to just like pull dead characters back into the plot. If we have to kill off, old Lee Shaw. So I think that again, it's like they're walking on shaky ground here, where I'm perfectly fine with the whole Isabel of it all, and again, Kentaro kind of bucking against, especially in the wake of his father's death, kind of going against everybody. But I feel like I'm not entirely sure why the show needs to do this just yet.
Do you think there's like a reset that has to do with like major time travel this season? That like, I don't know. Is there a way that this is all a prequel to the Godzilla 2014 that we recognize as part of the canon? And they're going to do like a that was like a universe where Titan X went mad and we had to restart everything. And now that makes the Monsterverse. And the reason you haven't seen anybody recognized from the Monsterverse besides Kong and Godzilla is because you were actually in this sort of like deleted dimension the entire time.
I think that would be fine. Like, I wouldn't mind that. But if that were the case, why wouldn't you be doing more fun stuff? Right? Like, the show has also... Why
wouldn't you be blowing this show up more?
Yeah, like, why aren't we getting like a real version of Godzilla and Titan X fighting in Tokyo? Right? Like, if it doesn't matter... and who knows, maybe this is the big twist of season 2, where we find out that it's not going to matter, but we still have one more season for them to do a bunch of stuff that's not going to matter. Right. And it just goes crazy, and Godzilla does all kinds of shit that Godzilla doesn't actually do in the movies, but we eventually know that, maybe it's not gonna matter because these are two separate timelines or two separate dimensions or whatever. I just don't know why you would go that far, or you would go this deep into the second season, kind of walking on eggshells around not breaking any canon, to then invalidate this entire story and be like, well, it wasn't canon anyway. It's like, all right, well, you could have had some fun along the way. Like, could have blown some shit up.
We went to San Soledad. We saw the giant fish festival.
Yeah, come on. I mean, we could have done some really cool monster stuff, right? You could have taken Kong off of Skull Island at that point, right? Who cares? But I guess they're still towing this line, and if that ends up being the twist, and they spent all of this time not doing anything fun with this gag or this sort of plot device, it actually is going to be kind of frustrating, because then it's like you wasted a huge opportunity to like take a big detour in this story universe and get away with it.
There's another world where it goes, to use a phrase we used to use on Old Storm spoilers, it goes through the thing. Mm-hmm. Where like we arc out the Shaws, and at the end of this season, somehow John Goodman steps into the room and is like, "What I miss?" And we're like, "That makes no sense." And then I have to spend like another 8 months wondering how that's going to make sense before season 3. And I'm like, there is a way to stupid your way out of this. I don't want to say that just because we're sinking, we can't go through the center of the planet and back out into fantastic Godzilla supernova space.
And listen, if the movies have taught us anything, it is entirely possible in this story universe to stupid your way out of it, because it's a story universe about giant monsters. Like, it's inherently ready to be dumb, and people come into it. The audience comes into it fully accepting that it might get weird and dumb, and we might end up in the Hollow Earth with like the clan of Kongs and shit, like, or that Space Godzilla is going to show up at some point. It's fine. You got to commit to it though. Like, don't dance around it, and don't make us be bored for like 6 episodes straight.
Very fair. In the Axis Mundi, young Shaw is hiking towards the Titan X mountain, and old Shaw's like, it's going to get hairy, which once again, does he remember this or not? And that's when the Ion Dragon shows back up. Young Shaw is running away from it when that centipede titan that we were foreshadowing half an hour ago shows up. Now that's chasing Young Shaw until it turns out the Iron Dragon was hunting the centipede, who gets immobilized by some slime barf and picked up by a clawtail. At the well, Keiko is lowering Kate into it in the rope phrase, and Keiko lives her worst fear as someone else she loves drops down a hole. In the Axis Mundi, Shaw gets to Titan X Mountain and hacks through the shell rock to place a tracker into Titan X's tentacle. Zook gets it on his iPad in 2017, which means it works. Titan X's tentacle then bursts out of the mountain, which seems like it would change where it is later, but whatever, back to the well. Kate finds out that the well resonates. The Titan calls stronger in its puddles when she sees the double iris pattern. There's also sunlight in there, so we know there's a cave to the outside close. Kate silently wonders at all of these things before letting her grandmother know that she's okay, and then she's going to follow the sun out of there. In the Axis Mundi, young Shaw has outrun Titan X, I guess. Don't worry about it. Old Shaw tells young Shaw to go back to the re-entry vehicle, and that's where the Ion Dragon will pull him back out of the Axis Mundi. Old Shaw tells him not to forget that he's a good man, and the two say their goodbyes. It's the connection through Zook's plot device of battery-powered nonsense runs out. I don't understand what's happening. Keiko is back on the beach set and beach location. I don't know why I said set. Give that one location this week its credit. And finds Kate, who wandered out through the tunnels. Kate says the woman of the legend heard the Titan song or lured into the cave where they, like Kate, understood the song better. Kate says Titan X isn't lost and it isn't dangerous. It needs their help. She will not clarify this week. Back at Dr. Suzuki's house.
It's just a mother that needs to find its children.
To find all its little scarab babies.
The help of the women.
With the help of a very specific genetic line of Japanese women.
With a little bit of cross-species feminine solidarity, we can solve this problem.
Zook says the Titan X signal is headed to Australia, so he and Old Shaw better get on their way. Instead, Old Shaw says goodbye because he's going Australia alone because he may not live through this one. And oh yeah, he arced out a little bit on this episode, buddy. I do think we might be seeing the end of Old Shaw fairly soon, but who knows? Maybe Kurt Russell had a blast on season 2 and is like, why not sign me up for a third one?
Sure.
I don't think we know that yet.
Yeah, I do think it, if that is the case, that they don't know if Kurt Russell wants to do a third season, it has kind of caused some problems. Like, you know, because whether or not, and this is where I could be wrong. Like if Kurt Russell hasn't decided yet and does eventually want to come back for a third season, they're going to have a pretty interesting hole to write themselves out of to get him, his character, back for a third season. Not impossible, but it's going to be weird. You know, or he told them, all right, this is my last season, and we are just sort of heading for the obvious, here's the end of Shaw's journey sort of thing, which is fine, I guess. But, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The threat from earlier in the season that Monarch's like, as soon as this is over, Shaw's going back in the hole, does make me think that he's not going to go back in the hole one way or the other. So we'll see what happens. At least this week, Floaty Outpost picks up the signal from Hourglass 01 and deduces its Titan X just in time to show the director who's made it off the screen and onto the ship.
He can also teleport.
Titan X. He can also teleport. We cut to Titan X with one glowing tentacle headed towards desert Australia, and that's where we leave this week. I
have questions about this last shot.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Godzilla in the desert in season 1, so it's not weird to see the desert. But is there a place where the desert butts up against the sea like that?
I think Australia is a very large percentage desert, so I would imagine that has to be somewhere.
But does it hit the coastline like that? It read to me as weird, especially because that desert, the way that desert is styled, didn't read to me as like an Australian desert. It read to me more as like the Saharan, like African desert, whereas like sand dunes and shit. I'm like, I normally would think of the Australian desert as like the outback and like, you know, like the bush. So I don't, the visual of it, where it was like the ocean stops and immediately we have like giant sand dunes. And as far as the eye can see, I'm like, I don't know if that's how that works.
All right. Neil, pull up a web browser.
Okay. Easy.
And search Stockton Beach.
Okay. Stockton Beach.
And then look at the images. And I'm thinking maybe it's something like this.
Oh,
I mean, some of it has like some vegetation, but it is sort of like dunes meet the ocean in some of it.
All right.
I'm just saying maybe it's a real place, maybe it's not, but it's also like you're
this
all
is
CG.
Stockton Beach, Port Stephens, Australia. I'm now convinced that this exists. Fair enough.
I think it might be something like that. But also
why does this tourism photo have camels? Did they have camels in Australia?
I mean, it's the episode's fault, because we don't trust this show to the degree that they show us one stupid shot teasing what I'm sure next week we're going to be at that location. And
I immediately was like,
distrusting
is that the same desert where we saw Godzilla in season 1? And I'm like, I don't think so. Were they in Australia?
No, the Godzilla one was near a portal in Africa.
Yeah. Which kind of looks like the same desert, except no ocean was there. All right. Whatever.
Yeah, man. I don't know where Godzilla is in time or space after this episode. We do have to add to the body count, finally. This week, we see Brant and Burke and one other member of the Operation Hourglass crew die in Axis Mundi. And maybe we saw them in season 1. I don't really remember.
Sure.
But this show has been low on the body count, so I was ready to rack one up.
They may have been killed by, I want to give it its official government name, the Endopede.
Ooh, yes.
The Wikizilla official name for this centipede-like.
The centipede?
It's the Endopede and the Endoswarmers are the little guys that like the little ones that grabbed Keiko and pulled her into the hole. So they apparently are,
all down there. They could take care of their young, unlike Titan X, which freaks out.
Unlike Titan X, who leaves them across time and space in different places across the Earth, and then eventually forgets the migration pattern. And just goes off on her own wherever and is so confused that she needs several Japanese women to come and help her.
So we got Titan X, we got Iron Dragon, we got Endopede. That's our Titan watch. I didn't have anything to add to the timeline. What even is the timeline in this episode? I'm mad. All right. Neil, is there anything...
Eventually, we're just gonna have to delete the whole timeline.
That's what it seems like. And none of this was important. Neil, is there anything you want to talk about?
We were here.
Is there anything you want to talk about this week's episode before we move into the storm?
I mean, again, I think that there's stuff that looks good. The Axis Mundi looks good. I don't begrudge them wanting to get Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell exchanging dialogue. They weren't in a scene together necessarily, but that's, kind of the fun eventuality of the show's gimmick, which it does in its opening credits every week, which is, Kurt Russell as Lee Shaw, Wyatt Russell as Lee Shaw. So that's all fine, but it does feel like we're getting fewer and fewer frames of Titan with each episode. And I really don't, as much as I respect the Ion Dragon and the Endopede and Endoswarmers, I don't count them. Like when they're on screen, I'm not feeling the Titan energy. So like really all we got this week was like one little sequence of Titan X swimming toward the desert from the ocean. So yeah, I just, what it sets up is a huge bar to clear. The bar is going up every week. Every week that we don't get more. And, last week, maybe the bar didn't go up as high because we got the little dream sequence. But the
Mhm.
bar moves up every week for how good the eventual big confrontation has to be, or series of confrontations have to be, right? Because I was promised for this second season that I was going to get Kong and Godzilla and Titan X, and that some combination of those three were going to fight. And so far, none of that has really happened. So I have high expectations that this show may struggle to meet the longer it delays giving me what I want.
Yeah, I think if I would have done one thing to this show, and I would have questioned it if I was a producer on this show, I would have been like, why are we paying to go to Thailand instead of paying for the end of that sequence where Titan X comes out of the hill in Axis Mundi and Lee Shaw runs away? And he just successfully runs away from Titan X that gets up and does nothing.
Mhm.
Like, I think they had, some budget to use, obviously, for the Axis Mundi sequence. I like the, Endo Speed being hunted by the Ion Dragon, but like also they added a new location. Like I know that they're a television show, they need to save money. That's why we're, still back at Dr. Suzuki's apartment with the lovely little garden in the middle for like multiple characters. That's why we like get to the well and stay at the well with people. Like, I know adding sets is its own thing, but why not just, if you have May on the boat and you have all the boat sets, like lean into that and not include Thailand as part of this week's budget, or have that happen back in Tokyo. Like, it seems sort of, I mean, great that they're a globe hopping show and always kind of has been, but it seems like that's a weird distribution of budget this late in the season.
It's like, it's fun to be a globe hopping story in this story universe, but usually you hop across the globe, and when you get to a place, a big ass monster shows up.
Right.
Right. Like, you're not just driving around.
So we are always going where the monster is. We're not just going to random
You're
places.
not just driving back and forth to the airport, not telling each other important information.
May is so patiently just waiting on a plane as they fly her and airdrop her in the middle of the South Pacific. All right. Let's, I hope, give you some answers about the rest of the season as we transition into the storm. All right, Neil, we're back in the storm. Next week's episode 8, Separate Ways. The description is Titan X makes landfall in Australia where Shaw lures Godzilla into a showdown, and Isabel uses the battle as a distraction for her secret operation.
Okay.
So here's what has been rumored, Neil.
I mean, Thailand is closer to Australia than Japan is.
Yes.
Technically.
The rumors were this season that episode 8 would, I believe, have the Godzilla fight, and then the final episode would have the Kong fight against Titan X.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think we're coming up on the Godzilla fight. Not only does the description make me think that's true, but also if you look at the runtime, next week's episode is 39 minutes long. The past 2 episodes have been over 50 minutes long. It would make sense that they're like, here's the fight. Also, we can't afford that much of the fight.
Here's the fight and only the fight.
Don't worry about it. I mean,
Guess what? All fight.
Shaw bites it. Yeah. All fight and Shaw bites it, I think, could be on the table.
Sure.
If we are going to arc out Shaw this week.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we're definitely getting Godzilla next week. That seems like something that's possible.
Hey, I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess.
I guess if it's in the middle of nowhere, Australia, there would be no reason to report him before he shows up in King of the Monsters if they want to do the whole cover up.
That is the other thing is
sense.
like, I guess, and again, this would make the idea of them doing something to wipe out this from the timeline even more frustrating. they've gone out of their way to put this fight in a position where everybody could completely cover it up and no one in the world would know that it happened, so that it would explain why no one's talking about it in the movies that have already been made. So I think that's, fine. Now, the title of this episode does give me pause, because separate ways indicates that maybe after this confrontation, our two titans go their separate ways, as some of our humans are starting to do. And that means that one of them has to not be part of the Kong fight, which I would assume would be Godzilla.
Yeah,
Because the season's kind of about Titan X. So like, you can't kill. Are you going to kill off Titan X in episode 8 or drop Titan X back in the hole in episode 8? And what are you going to do for 2 more episodes?
Separate ways, if we're going off of this episode being string theory, could be whatever Isabella does branches the timeline. Like we're going in a different direction.
Okay.
Because the other part, Isabella uses the battle as a distraction for a secret operation. Reads to me, distraction means it's not in Australia. So all our main characters aren't rushing to the same spot. Kentaro and Isabel are going somewhere else. And I'm wondering if to access the Axis Mundi, they have to go to the Skull Island Apex Lab, because that's where Kentaro did all the stuff with his dad. And maybe she has like some equipment, and that was an Apex facility.
Right.
So
and whatever they do will draw one or both of Titan X and Godzilla to Skull Island, so that they
more importantly draw the plot. Draw the plot back to Skull Island. I think that's the most exciting portal that they have on the show. So I would hope that's what Isabel and Kentaro are doing. What they plan to do that then just ends up with something happening on Skull Island, I have no idea. I still don't understand, and I hope Isabel explains what her actual time traveling plan is, because maybe that'll give a fun, exciting direction for what this show was about, because it obviously isn't about Titan X fighting things.
Sure.
Like it was sort of sold.
Yeah, we need Kentaro to quickly sign that NDA, I guess. So he can learn the truth.
Why do we need Kentaro specifically? Is it about his research? Is it about his timeline? We got stuff to figure out. Before we get to the Godzilla project, there is another Godzilla spoilery thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is Call of Duty announced that it's going to do another Monsterverse tie-in. Did you play any of the first Call of Duty Monsterverse tie-in?
No, can't say that I did. I've never really been a big Call of. I was always more of a Rainbow Six guy myself back in the day.
I haven't really been Call of Duty, but there was a time period where I was getting into like Fortnite or whatnot, and my more serious gaming friends were like, why don't you try Call of Duty instead? And I tried it and I didn't like it, but I kept it installed, and then they did the Monsterverse event, so I'm like, let's jump in again. And it is fun to be doing your normal battle royale, and then suddenly there's a Titan alert and either Godzilla or Kong showed up to like wreck your game essentially.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, having Godzilla in a video game is awesome.
Yeah, when Fortnite did it later, I'm almost positive it's because the Call of Duty one went so well, which is why they're doing it again. And they put out some art which shows us some things about the Godzilla Monsterverse design, where it stands on supernova. One is in the background, there's a shadow that appears to be Kong, and our first look at his exosuit, or some sort of machine that's going to help him battle whatever the bad guy ends up being in supernova, probably Space Godzilla. And then Godzilla himself has once again upgraded his back dorsal fins. They are longer, spikier, and purple now, instead of the pink as we last saw them. So that's some Godzilla Monsterverse updates from the real future of Godzilla's Monsterverse. Can't wait to see.
Who do you think gives Godzilla or Kong the exosuit?
I can believe that at this point in the Monsterverse universe, it is the same guy who gave him the glove, but has been working on like a backup for Kong should like Godzilla ever get out of control. or it's like, I don't know. I hope it's a human. I think it'd be really weird if it's part of the Hollow Earth Society, like the Eway or the Monkey Society itself figures out a way to like forge mechanics. I think that would be weird. I think it's much more likely that we help Kong once again as humans, because if the threat is the planet now, then why not, embrace our
Sure.
Titan protectors?
Yeah, because I do kind of wonder, did they ever really explain what happened to Apex after Godzilla versus Kong? I guess I need to go back and watch the
New
movie,
Empire.
New Empire, but that doesn't even have a whole lot to do with what's going on Earth anyway, right? Most of that's set in Hollow Earth, so.
Well, Earth Godzilla is just slapping down other monsters and accumulating power. So Monarch, is my understanding, is just kind of watching him do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember what's happening with Apex at all.
Yeah.
Good to know. We'll have to see what happens next year, or maybe, later. There's only a few episodes left, but we will definitely be back. Not going our separate ways, but sticking with this show with episode 8 next week. Neil, anything else you want to talk about before we head into the edit bay?
I think that's it. They need to stop teasing us and just do the Godzilla thing already.
Just do it already. Hopefully that happens. But that's also a question we're going to have to deal with as we move into this week's Godzilla Project.
This alpha predator of yours, Doctor. Do you really think he has a chance?
The arrogance of man is thinking nature is in our control, and not the other way around. Let them fight.
Okay, Neil, we are back. We have been through production on Godzilla Awakening, your Godzilla movie, directed by Neil Miller.
Sure.
We're gonna now have to head back to the production. Was great. You had your leadership dice really helped you out, and did some good rolls for you. You did have a leftover crew die from some bonuses, so you don't have any lost tokens, but you do have a D6 crew die. So anything involving the crew, you could add that to your roll and boost it. Either, out of failure into success, something into extreme failure, but you're not going to deal with the crew this week because we are going to deal with editing. And then next week, you will have post-production. So here is how we start this week. Your production came in on schedule, on budget, and you have a bunch of shots. You have a lot of previs. This is all going to go to your editor, who is going to make an assembly cut that will eventually become the actual cut of the movie. Maybe this assembly cut will be closer or further from your director's cut. That's still going to be up in the air, because your first interaction will be you have to say a summation of production to Dave Gonzalez, legendary studio head, who is calling in. He's being like, saw you got the cans back. Toho's wondering how it's going. I heard you made some discoveries on set. And so I'm going to ask you to, tell legendary Dave how the physical production went and some of your goals going into the editing process. This is going to result in a role that's going to be your studio oversight role. So based on what you say, you will get a value for either experience or reputation for this interaction with the studio. A failure will give you a studio interference D4 die that you must apply to your reshoots scheduling encounter this week. That'll be this week's final roll. But the studio was going to mess with you if you fail. A success will grant you a D4 favor from an executive dice that can be used as a bonus on any future roll.
Amazing.
So we're either the studio's gonna mess with you. Is it gonna be in your favor? Is it gonna be not in your favor? It's me, legendary Dave. Neil, how did Godzilla Awakening go, and what are you seeing for the rest of post-production?
Well, listen, I'm so happy that you called. We are feeling great. We had an excellent shoot. We had a perfectly spotless safety record on the shoot. Nothing went wrong. Nothing caught fire. Nobody was injured. We had no food poisoning from catering. We love to see it. We also had a really great chemistry with the cast, both the chemistry among the cast and the rapport that our creative team had with the cast, to the extent that I think we found some great moments of improv, in the sense that we deepened the lore behind our Viking characters, and we found little moments to add to the depth of our characters, which I think will be very helpful in bringing the human story forward a little bit, because, as you know, we spent a lot of time prepping the big action stuff, the previs and the design of our monsters. So we're very confident that that's going to come out well. So I was also very heartened that we were able to find some additive sparks on set with our wonderful cast, and that buy-in that we got from the cast and all of those wonderfully won roles with the cast, I think will carry forward, especially when we come down to the press tour. I think we're going to have some really good vibes when we come to promoting this film once it is finished and we're ready to unleash it upon the public. So we're going into editing feeling really good. We've got a lot of stuff to go through. We are looking to get a tight movie together. I don't want it to be to feel overly long. We've got a fairly straightforward premise. We're gonna get put the pieces together. I do think there are a couple of scenes that we may want to go back and polish up with a reshoot or two, and some things that we found on set that we feel like we can add. Our post-credit scene that we think is going to be a really fun surprise for the audience, that will require maybe a couple more days of bringing the cast back, and the cast is on board. So as long as that sounds good to the studio, I think we should do it. And I'm excited to see how the editors pull it all together, and excited to see how our wonderful, very expensive visual effects studio brings home the final polish on their work.
I like it a lot, Neil. I like what you're saying. I got off the phone with Lupita's agent the other day. We were having lunch, and apparently she's in this post-credits scene you're talking about now.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's interesting. I wasn't, we got her at a pretty good deal, if you recall. But unfortunately, it doesn't have a sequel clause in it yet. But I suppose that's a conversation we could talk about after this movie is done. I like what you're saying, but also, this is your first big movie. It seems like you're saying the right things. I'm going to give you an experience of 6 that you have to clear for this to keep me out of your hair for the rest of the process. Or I'm going to say also a reputation of 6. And that's just going to go off of that television show that you were able to pull together for us. You were able to ultimately deliver on what you promised. And so far that I have seen nothing on this production that makes me think that's going to go either way. So stepping back into Game Master Dave, you got an experience of 6, a reputation of 6. If you're on YouTube, you know what Neil's dice values are, but his reputation is his D8 dice, and his experience is D4 plus 3, which means you basically just have to roll a 3 or above to have extreme success there. And then reputation, obviously you have to roll, you don't have to blow up at all. You just have to get the mark of 6.
Sure. This is an interesting one. I think I'm going to roll with the experience dice. They've been lucky for me so far. and I'm just going to lean on the experience. As much as I would very much appreciate any feedback the studio has, I do think that the experience I have will come in handy as we finish this project.
You did take that bonus. It's been paying off for you. All right. So you need to beat an experience of 6. That is a 2 plus a 3 is a 5. So unfortunately, Neil, you will be taking a studio interference die later this episode.
All right. But it wasn't a critical fail.
It was not a critical fail. So you just get a D4. It could have been much worse and something bad could have happened for you. But you know what? Almost no production gets through post-production without any studio interference. Sure. I feel like this role is pretty realistic, given you are a first-time director.
Yeah, and it's not unreasonable to think that Legendary is very protective of their property. Their property being Godzilla.
Oh, and it doesn't even have to be a Legendary studio interference. You also have to show Toho a cut of this movie eventually.
That is true.
But let's figure out what that movie cut is actually going to be as we enter Encounter 1. This is going to be a role that's going to either give you some more box office success or take some money off of your remaining budget.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the conundrum, Neil. If you recall, because of the order that things were shot, you have a high roll on an Act 3 previs, and your high rolls on the execution of Act 3. You actually shot the Act 1 beach material before you started changing the plot.
Sure.
So when you shot the Act 1 beach material, you shot them fighting creatures back to the beach and then getting on a boat and then sailing away in Anya Taylor-Joy with a couple of Vikings. Watch as things go. You've now added that the visitor needs to be there, but you've also shot a whole sequence of ice third act stuff of them coming down the ice mountain. We talked about them maybe surfing down an iceberg. We have a bunch of footage of this, but basically you have a bunch of footage either from Act 1 jungle stuff or the mountain stuff that is basically these Vikings fighting digital creatures. And so your editor's like, if you want, there is a way that you can take this movie and have a 30 to 40 minute climax where it's like they get to the mountain an hour in, and then you have enough footage that the rest is as you've discussed with your post-production team and prevised out, mostly ground-based action of them getting down the mountain.
Sure.
You don't have to rush it with a ice surfing sequence if you're too afraid you're going to James Bond wind surfing on a, tidal wave it if it's going to get a little silly. But on the other hand, you do have to sort of condense how much your plot needs to work in order to get up that mountain within an hour to have this big climactic, Act 3 sequence.
So less time up the mountain, more time down the mountain.
Your editor's saying basically you could have a 30 to the climax of your movie could be a significant chunk of your movie.
Sure.
They best case scenario, they talk about it the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, or it's just this big thing. Plot, what the plot was supposed to happen.
Sequence and here's what I like about this idea. This is where Godzilla is in our movie.
Yes.
So
much more Godzilla versus Paragon.
Yeah, I like this because it brings even more focus to our crown jewel of our movie. The name in the title, not just the faces on the poster, is Godzilla, and people are going to want that. And I do like the idea from a pacing standpoint that we have sort of a relentless finish, because we are, as I just told the studio, looking for a relatively tight runtime, right?
Yes.
I'm not looking for this to be a big, long 2.5 hour saga, because we're not doing a whole lot here plot wise. So I think that this could be a very fast and intense, 95 under 100-minute movie that just sort of kicks your ass for the last 30-40 minutes, and people walk out of the theater going, well, hell yeah, I would get on that ride again.
Yeah.
And also more showings per day helps the box office.
Oh yeah. Editor Dave is like, okay, then like what I have some stuff where they're traveling to the settlement. There's a really interesting sequence where Christopher Hayview's character tries to drink from a river, but it disagrees with him because the poison river is part of the Viking mythology, and like Thyra's starting to believe that maybe she's in this magical place that her father's already told her about. I have like an entire fight sequence with this dragon guy that might end up not dying, but we did shoot him dying in Gibraltar from Act 1. And we have sort of like this Roman couple that is around, but also how much time we could give them as characters, as a couple in this runtime is going to be majorly truncated if we do this big climax.
Sure.
So in order to patch those holes, if we want to do it, it is going to require a little bit of your reshoot time.
Okay.
So that's why a failure on these rolls is going to take money off of your remaining budget, is because you're basically going to have to patch the holes that you have by having a lot of extra plot. But also you have basically this third act that you've rolled really well for. So that's going to exist basically as you want it to.
Cool.
So based on those things.
But we've saved
as you
budget.
Mentioned,
so this, we have some budget left.
You have a $10.5 million left. So I'm going to say you're going to have to roll for an experience of 5 or a creativity of 13. And I haven't told you yet what happens if you do great, which is a success, any degree of success. You get 1 box to both your box office rolls at the end, 1 dice to both your box office rolls at the end. And if you get a extreme success, so towards the top end of whatever die you're rolling, I'm going to give you an additional international box office dice, because people may not speak English, but everybody speaks Godzilla action across the world.
Sure.
So we got experience of 5 or creativity of 13.
That
creativity should be easy, but if you hit a 1, you go in negative budget.
Which means we got to go to the studio for more money, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's so tempting, though. The upside is huge with the creativity die. But I could mitigate potential damage with the experience die. This is the tough decision here. Right? Because if I roll a 1 with the experience die, it's a 4.
Correct. Which
And
is still not a success, but
only
close.
Only 1 off of a success, right? Because it's a 5.
Correct.
But if I roll anything lower than a 13, anything lower than like a 10 on a creativity die, it's worse.
You're going to lose a lot of money that you will need for reshoots next week.
Yeah. This is tough. This is a tough one because I kind of want that international box office bonus. But I have to be confident that I'm going to get a big roll out of that D20, which D20 die in my life's experience are horrible and evil.
Well,
and
your D4 experience does have a +3 modifier.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to get a success, but it's also easier to get an extreme success, because if you roll a 4, you're going to like blow up.
Oh,
so
I guess that's true. And then
you
I would roll
immediately go to
again.
like a 7. So I don't think you're gambling with an international box office die with either one. You're really just gambling on, do you like clear the budget with a lot of money or not?
Okay, that makes sense. Let's go with the experience die then, because I have to mitigate the damage here. I have protected the budget so well throughout this process that I can't blow it now.
All right, we need an experience of 5. That is a 3 + 3 is a 6.
Yes.
I'm going to add 1 to each box office. I'm not going to say that's an extreme success.
It's a success nonetheless.
But it is a success none. the less. Let's move on to your assembly cut. Your editor grabs everything together. It's like, I'm going to do that 30 to 40 minute climax that we're talking about. We're going to throw everything all together. Neil, I want you to explain some key things to the editor that you want to make sure you have in this movie. We have shot a lot of stuff. We've decided we're going to have, a big Act 3 conclusion. The things that I'm looking for here are things about stuff we haven't addressed too much yet. I would love if there's anything specific you would like for Beetle Baragon to do, because right now he kind of chases a nuke and gets sort of like scared off by some fight things. And that's kind of unclear on that. Mm-hmm. But we could also paste it over because you had a pretty good previs roll for Act 2. I would love if you specifically have an arc in mind for Anya Taylor-Joy's Thyra character. We've talked a little bit about the possibility that her mom was killed by a monster, but we also, that's in the Beowulf part of the story. So is it a real monster? Is it a man? Will we ever know? She either believes or doesn't believe her father, who ends up in what they thinks is causing or preventing Ragnarok. She either believes or doesn't believe up until the point that he dies, in which she takes up his mantle and either does or does not want to get off the island. So if you were to like give me one or two sequences action-wise that you want to like nail down, like specifically, this could be like a, Baragon Fire Breath versus Godzilla fight, or his beetle zipping away in Act 2. Just give me like a couple of highlights, and then give me what you think like your movie is about, your big arc from Thyra's perspective.
Sure. Okay. So as for Baragon, I think that I want him to feel, we don't need to dig into his motivations quite as much as I want him to feel kind of like a force of nature. Got it. We described him in our initial pitch as like a storm, and that's him sort of rolling in on them. And, the way we describe Monster Island is that it is agitated, right? And that Baragon is just sort of angry. So I think that that's just sort of, we want all of the sequences to just portray him as a almost nebulous anger. And for that to be sort of a confusing thing for our Vikings, right? They're very much out of their time, out of their depth, because that informs the other part of the question, which is the Thyra plot. Because I think that where I want her arc to begin is from a place of deep skepticism about her father, because the way Mads played this character on set is that he is very devout in his belief in these legends, but to an extent, and he has told her the story that her mother was killed, but like Thyra wasn't there to witness it, that her mother was killed by a monster, and that she has grown up, and despite being a fierce warrior, despite having a great love for her father, she has always been sort of skeptical of his greater beliefs, right? She's always been sort of weary. She's always kind of thought he's a little crazy, little loopy. And that can sometimes be an endearing thing about him, but it also is a point of tension early in our story, because she sort of looks at him with a bit of resentment, like, you got us into this shit because you think we're about to go into Ragnarok. You think we're about to prevent Ragnarok, and we really just got lost. And it isn't until he makes this great sacrifice and we lose him that she decides, whether I believe this or not, I need to finish this because of the great love that I have for my father, because he is the one who raised me in the absence of my mother. And I think that she remains pragmatic through the entire story, but she does come out of the story seeing things that she can't explain. So maybe there is a hint of her gaining a little bit of faith in the legends by the end of it. But ultimately, it's about saving her people and, getting them off the island. And, I guess finishing her father's journey.
I like it. All right. We're going to say that this is a great place for a determination roll. So I'm going to say determination of 7 to how well this vision can be executed. Or a leadership role, because you are depending on your crew to execute it and explaining things that they, had no exist.
Mm-hmm.
Your editor has gone through all the footage. So I'm going to say a leadership of 4 if you want to hit that up. Here is what's at stake. Failures, once again, take 1 million off the budget. You got to shoot some more stuff to go into the assembly cut.
Sure.
It's not going to work. Success adds 1's die to both box office results and becomes a modifier on the legacy score.
Okay.
So if you roll a 10 on a 7 and you blow up, you could get +3 on your legacy score, plus additional box office dice, and leadership. It's more so. This is about the legacy of Godzilla, how it's going to make it out the end product.
Okay. And leadership, if I would have to roll if I roll a 5 and the +1 makes it a 6, does that blow it up?
No, the modifier does not blow it up. You have to naturally roll the highest on the dice to blow up.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I still like the leadership role because, again, for some reason, I keep coming back to this idea of mitigating the damage.
You want some more money at the end of this.
And I will take a 2 over a 1 any day. If a 1 is the roll from either of these die, because I think there's a much bigger downside to rolling a low number on the determination die. And plus, my leadership has been strong through this entire project.
It has.
From a karmic
You just
standpoint.
have a vision, you're going to go for it. So you got to beat a leadership of 4 on your D6. Oh, that is a natural 1, Neil.
Oh my God. All right. Well, hey, it's a 2. So like I said, I'll take a 2 over a 1 any day.
That is correct. So you do take 2 million off the budget because that's how many you failed by. But because it is a natural failure, that means something is going to go wrong. Which is he's cut a different arc for Thyra, and he's like, okay,
all right,
I understand what you were talking about. I thought this was much more of a story about failure. And he boots up the cut. And we start, and he shows you a scene that he's towards the beginning of the movie. It's Christopher Hayview's character talking to Thyra's character. And she's, being frustrated, trying to, let's say, sharpen some arrows or something. And he's talking to her, and he says, amongst other things, there are 2 ways that we learn. We learn from being told, and we learn when we fail. And so the cut that you see, your first assembly cut, is about the power of sort of chasing madness, but also refusing to back down. So you live your life by legend, and you live your life by being the last man standing. And that is ultimately a very stoic performance from Anya Taylor-Joy, where she sees failure as an opportunity to move forward. She doesn't see failure as an opportunity to stop. So in the cut that you see, it's actually very little about belief. It is about core values of not giving up. It is very sort of by the numbers, sort of with some pieces that maybe you could fix in reshoots if you want, but definitely not the belief system that you're talking about. The mad stuff is interesting, and he has a really interesting sequence that he's cut together where Mads notices sort of the the Roman centurion eagle
Mm-hmm.
as the eagle that is antagonizing Baragon and his symbolized eagle.
Mm-hmm.
So when the shields form the phalanx and form the eagle, that's what like gives Mads his boost to like join the fight. He's mythologically correct. He sees all the signs. This idea that the poison rivers of this sort of afterlife is what makes Christopher Hayview's Viking character sick once they get on the island. All these sort of like things that mean they could be living the legend
Mm-hmm.
ultimately seem more important than what Thyra thinks about them. That's what you see
Okay.
in your assembly cut. It's there, but it's not connecting to the character.
Interesting. I mean, I don't hate it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good because you got to build from here.
Well, I guess here's a question. Could I use my crew die, since this is the editor is part of the crew, to fix this if I wanted to?
You could maybe fix this next week with reshoots.
Okay.
But you can't fix this week with the crew die.
Here's the thing though, Dave. Here's why I don't hate it and I don't think it necessarily bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
One, Anya Taylor-Joy giving a stoic performance, still pretty solid. We still get good stuff from Mads and the rest of the cast. It still reads as a very Viking-esque journey. And this is a Godzilla movie.
Yes.
And we are going to blow the fucking doors off of every theater with the final 40 minutes of this movie. So as long as we get to reshoot our post-credit scene and Toho goes for the maybe franchise connectivity of the Lupita stuff at the end, I don't think it's going to matter.
All right. So here we go into the final encounter of this week. This is your reshoot scheduling. So here's some realities. You can, if you want, these are things that we've talked about reshooting in past episodes. Reshoot the lore in the opening Gibraltar sequences, have some more lore in the boats. We could reshoot the Act 2 Baragon Beetle battle climax that has that Dragon Man, the human fighter, returning to actually combat Mads. Reshoot the Act 3 beach ending to include the assist with the poison tip ballista and the visitor being there. That's Lupita coming back. And of course, shooting the end tag with Thyra, Visitor, and the survivors showing up at the King of the Monsters timeline. Just as they pull into a futuristic city, a Titan alert goes off.
Sure.
These are things that you would like to shoot. You could also, if you have time and the dice are kind to you, shoot some more stuff with Thyra and try to pull yourself back into more of a edit that you would like that has the character things that you want. So here is what we are going to find out this week. You have a schedule gap for your remaining actors that begins in September of this year, giving you a 12-week window before December when Anya has to be done to shoot. And you will be working off the remainder of your budget, which is currently $8.5 million. There was a possibility if you had $10 million that you could get both a reshoot set, which is going to cost $5 million, and like an actual location, which you were talking about, which if you remember previously, the locations themselves cost $5 million. Right now, you're going to have to do a reshoot set.
Okay.
For your, so that's going to leave you with around $3.5 million to play around for other things to use creatively, whether that be new locations, props in the reshoot set, etc. And to figure out how much time you have, I'm going to roll a D10 for you. And then that's going to be how many times or how many weeks it takes to schedule all the actors coming back. So if you roll a 10 on this, you only get 2 weeks worth of reshoots.
Cool.
If you roll a 1 on this, you get 11 weeks worth of reshoots.
Okay.
So this is a possibility where you could have all the time in the world.
Sure. This is the only time where I need the 1. Or
Yeah, this is
where a
where you're
1 would
looking
be a
for.
good thing.
And it's a D10 dice. It doesn't always work well for you. Here we go. That is a 1. You have 11 weeks to shoot
11 weeks
the
of
rest of your
reshoots.
story.
Oh, great. All the time in the world.
But you only have $3.5 million left. So
Sure.
describe to me what you would like to shoot.
Mhm.
And if you would like to include another set or location, that is a additional, $2.5 million? You could ask if that's what you want, if that's what you're going for.
Okay.
That is going to determine what you roll for. It's going to be in either leadership or determination. I'm going to decide what level of success or failure based on what you talk about. And the fact that this is the one where you have to roll a studio interference dice with it. So that's
Got it.
going to alter your roll by 4.
Got it.
One way, a D4 die one way or the other. So, Neil, describe to me. I'm back again, legendary Dave. I've seen your assembly cut. What do you want to do with your reshoot time? Your 11 possible weeks. Cast is full. Lupita's agent is going to make time for you.
Great.
Cast is fully available. I don't think that's a problem. How are you going to spend your remaining $3.5 million to get what you want?
Well, I would like to prioritize the stuff at the end.
Okay.
The post-credits scene and the ballista stuff on the beach for 2 reasons. One, I think we could do the post-credits scene mostly digitally. We don't have to go to a real city. We can use the boats that we already built and put them in a tank in front of a big green screen and paint in a city behind them. That's easy. And
I'm going to say you could do that on the reshoot set. No problem.
Yeah. I think that we could also recreate portions of the beach to insert enough shots of the ballista, because again, we do need that prop, but when it comes to like shooting it and what happens after something comes out of it, that's mostly digital as well. So I think that that is only going to end up being a couple of shots that we need to piece in. So I'd like to prioritize that. I mean, we've shot. Did we shoot? We shot a death scene for Mads.
Shot a death scene for Mads, but we shot, I believe, 2. So
Okay.
there was the initial combat with Baragon battle
Right.
that he was going to die soloing, but we
Mhm.
went back and we shot him re-dying with the in a battle with the human fighter
Right.
who was back on the island, and then we shot the boats later than that, so we have the human fighter falling into the island. What we don't have is sort of the human fighters entry into the Act 2 battle, so we just need to kind of stitch those 2 things together.
Oh, okay.
If you decide Mads is going to die by human fighter.
Sure. So I guess
But we need Mads back to either bring that together or to do more lore in the first sequence. So Mads is definitely part of it. What you shoot with him, I guess, is up to you.
Well, but I don't know, because I mean, if we just need to do the entry point for our dragon guy,
Mhm.
we already have the end point of that, right? We have the fight
Right.
between him and Mads, so
So you could skip Mads, I guess.
we may
Do you
not
not
even
need him
need
for the-
Mads for this.
All right.
Which I think
Do you
would
not
save
need him
us.
for any lore? You feel like you got enough
I feel
lore?
like we got a lot of lore. Mads did such
All
a
right.
wonderful job with the lore.
That is the thing that's mostly in your assembly cut. So I'm
Yeah, so
glad
I'm
you got it.
I'm not as worried, and I'm again not as worried about as much about the setup as I am getting the finishing touches right on the 3rd act. So because I think, you know, a lot of the Viking stuff sort of explains itself, and much of it will be symbolic details that Reddit nerds will figure out later that our production design has done such a wonderful job of already putting in there. So that's all good. So I would think that we could also accomplish that while we're doing the ballista stuff, with just building just pieces of the beach set on our reshoot stage. And I think that's it. I don't think I want to add. I've given it some thought over the last couple of days. I've watched the assembly cut several times. I've come to terms with the Thyra story that we're telling. I still think Anya gives a great performance. I think that critics are gonna dig it. She's communicating a lot, even in the moments where she's not saying a whole lot. Stoic performances are in. I don't have a problem with that. So I think that it's the combination of that and the wonderful energy that Mads brings that's going to bring this whole thing home.
All right. I love what you said. I especially like that you adapted your editors. I mean, from a
collaborative
standpoint,
process.
Yeah, I would have called it a fuck up. You were very gracious. So I'm going to lower your leadership quality because you're definitely, adapting to what's happening.
Sure.
And then I think the other one would be like determination. You're not going to be swayed by a lesser budget than you thought or by a assembly cut that isn't working like you think it's going to work.
I'm confident in what we shot.
So the studio is going to have some questions, but here's what you need to beat. You need to beat a leadership of 3, which is your D6 die plus 1, which shouldn't be that hard, but there is a D4 being rolled against you and subtracted because the studio is going to interfere with you somehow. And then a determination of 6, which again, not that hard, but because it's your D10, but you will have a D4 rolled against you.
Yeah. So, okay, let me do some math here. That means the
determination.
determination.
Hold on. Let me tell you.
Okay.
Let me tell you what's
sorry.
the stakes.
Yeah. Give me the stakes.
Failures will become a negative modifier on your critic score. So this one's going to affect how good your movie is overall.
And it's incremental.
But not the box office.
So it's like each point below.
Right.
For the roll.
-1, -2,
worse
minus
the lower you go.
It gets worse. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Success adds 1 D6 die that you get to roll to your budget, and each one is $1 million. Just millions of dollars more, which next week, when you have to make some remaining decisions on your $3.5 million, you could be making some remaining decisions on your several million, 6 million max.
I mean,
1 million.
That in itself is a conundrum, because as much as I would love more money at this point to play with, I also have to consider the fact that I have not asked for any more money.
Correct.
And we have gone very deep into the production process being on budget, which is kind of a huge win in Hollywood. So I'm, it might be a tough role, but it's entirely possible that we could fix that later. That could be a later problem.
Yeah, I would to like slightly above table. If any leftover budget, not only is staying above budget allowing you leadership dice rolls to begin with, like at some point, if you were like way over budget or asking for money all the time, the studio wouldn't even trust your leadership roles at all.
Sure.
So we're glad that we have that around. But also there will be not only next week where you have to use some of your budget for reshoots, but you can spend your budget on extra visual effects even later in the process to try to get yourself out of a jam. So and then marketing's going to be paid for by the studio. So you don't have to worry about saving any money for that. You just have to get through, I believe, next week still in the black, and you'll be good to go. But there'll be some monetary decisions next week. Okay.
So now let's think about the math. It's a determination roll of 6.
Correct.
But with a penalty of 4 of up to 4 no matter what.
Correct.
Which means that I could roll a 10 and still only hit a 6. Which means that I would not benefit. Well, rolling a 10 would blow it up, though.
Correct. So you would roll again.
So I would roll again. So then it would be like 4 minus, something in the teens.
If you roll a 10, you're going to succeed.
Right.
Because even a -4 on a 11 isn't going to bring you to below 6.
Yeah. So, but rolling the 10 is kind of anything below a 10. It gets dicey, pun intended, because you roll a 9 and then you get a penalty of 4 and you didn't roll your 6. Then again, the penalties here are manageable because they are critic score based.
Just critic score based.
And we are again
and critic
making
score is
this
out of 100
for the fans and not the critics. So
right.
There's a way around. There's a way to massage that and still have a successful movie. I hope. You
also have a +2 to your critic score already, in terms of previous modifiers added from in the process.
Okay, and then the leadership roll was a
3.
A 3, which is easier to hit, but also again, I would kind of have to hit the top if I get the full penalty roll. Right, I would have to hit the 6 + 1. In order to negate a 4.
Correct.
Roll. So I guess it's either way. I'm in a tough spot.
You are, because the studio is going to mess around with you. This isn't really your fault from now. It's your fault from previously.
Well, and so it's a matter of how much damage I want to allow the studio to do to my movie.
Correct.
And really how much damage I want them to be able to do the critic score. And I the D10 has not been kind to me. This is tough. I mean, I almost feel like I should go with leadership role while I still have them.
While you still have leadership roles. That could be the consequence. If you critically fail on this, that could be the consequence.
That's, well, yeah.
Actually, yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't eat up all of the budget, right?
It wouldn't eat up any of the budget.
Oh, that's right. It's
negative modifier in a critic score.
I just have a potential of gaining budget.
Correct.
All right. And that still could be, budget could be a problem for next week. Let's go with the leadership role. I got to stick with what's working.
Gotta stick with that leadership role.
Until it goes
all right, you gotta
poorly.
beat a 3.
Although it did give me a 1. So.
You hit a 3 right on the money with your modifier. I rolled a 2.
Okay.
You got a +1. That is a 3. So we got it. That is technically a success. So Neil, you get $3 more million to your budget for next week, bringing you to what is it? What did I say? 6.5 and a reshoot set.
Wait, what was my penalty?
You didn't have a penalty. Oh, the penalty would have been a negative modifier in your critic score. Oh, right. Oh, yeah, right. No, I'm sorry. Your penalty dice, because the studio had to interfere.
Oh God, I could have got away with it.
You could have. I would have forgotten it. They would have had to email stormofspoilers@gmail.com and yell at me.
We gotta play fair. The
studio guy woke up and he's like, "Wait, what?
I can't save Scum, the live RPG game."
Studio Dave rolls a 3. So from right on the money with a 3, you go down to a 0.
Okay.
That is going to be a -3 to your critic score. I'm so
Fair
happy
enough.
for you there, Neil.
Which is ultimately just a -1 because I had a +2 already.
Correct. So, not the end of the day at all. So basically,
as studio interference goes, it could be a whole lot worse.
So you don't get any extra money, but what they are going to say is that they're not going to do the tank. You're going to have to do the reshoot set. Anything you shoot on the water, you're going to have to shoot dry for wet and figure it out in post-production.
That's fine.
But otherwise, you're going to head into...
We're already booting up a really great water sim with the visual effects company anyway for our big storm sequencing. So
you rolled really good on visual effects, 5 real world weeks ago, and we really gotta ride it all the way to the end.
If they can't simulate some not even that choppy seas at this point, we're in real trouble.
So remaining on this show, we have a post-production week next week where you do your reshoots. You'll start getting some final VFX in and finalizing what at least the plot of the movie is. 9, we have marketing, which is going to be fun for you and me as we kind of like make up a fake trailer for like Godzilla Awakening and a marketing strategy. Exactly. And then our final finale week, we'll have your finale rolls to figure out, what you really made on this movie and what is success for Godzilla Awakening.
And if I get any back end points whatsoever, or if I just did this for free as a director.
Or if you just did it for free. I mean, the fact that you still have leadership die this late in the game, I think is quite an accomplishment. And everything you said at the beginning of this week was correct. No onset injuries. The crafty was great. All the actors were like,
died.
We will give you 11 weeks worth of reshoots. So it just seems
no one got any rare diseases that are popping up all over the world in 2019.
Yeah. If anything, you overshot. And that's probably the good side that you want to be on. So next week, we'll figure out how Neil spends his $3.5 remaining $1 million on a reshoot. And if he has to go back for any more, as we go to reshoots and the rest of post-production on Godzilla Awakening, and hopefully on Monarch Legacy of Monsters, 39 minutes of Godzilla fight. Until then, go out there, be excellent to each other. Don't lower any of your loved ones into a dark hole.